So folks, let's check in with the only person I think is kind of emerging from the 2024 election cycle relatively okay on the Democratic side of things, okay? It's very specifically this man, Timothy
Hi, I'm
Walz.
Lindsay Reiser. It's 4 p.m. in New York, 3 p.m. in St. Paul, Minnesota, where Governor Tim Walz is delivering remarks on the election and his path forward.
So I know you have too, but let me just start out by saying it's great to be home. You came home. It's great to be home. And I do want to start a huge thank you and an I love you to Minnesota's First Lady, to Gwen. Thank you, Gwen. And to our amazing kids, Hope and Gus, they are everything to us, so thank you. And a big thank you to my family. My mom is here, who I want to say thank you to, Darlene. So. We did okay, didn't we? We did okay. She did a great job. I think she's as surprised as anybody that we're here, but and a huge thank you to Vice President Kamala Harris. First, for the faith that she placed in me, but more importantly, for the powerful and joyful campaign that she ran.
He tried his best.
I'm grateful for her leadership and forever grateful for her friendship. Also, a huge thank you to my staff, both the folks who worked on this campaign, who we got to know over the last 3 months, and to the amazing team right here in Minnesota. We showed the country these guys are the best in the business, and I'm proud to be your teammate in this. Thank you all. And to all of you, I want to thank every single person who stood with us in this fight.
I do want to say, I don't think he'll be, maybe he'll throw his hat into the running in 2028. But it's possible that his association with Kamala will basically sink his chances. But I would still like him to enter the primary and see how he does. I think he would still have the spirit to be able to move forward with this. I don't know that for sure. But it really does depend on to what extent, like, Dem voters associate him with a losing campaign.
Whether it was volunteers, donors, voters, or what I see in here, lifelong friends. It's an honor of a lifetime to have your support. And I'll never forget everything that you did to stand up for the values that we share together. So thank you to each and every one of you.
Yeah, and Super Jet Guy, he could maybe pull an FDR and, like, go on to win. I'm not saying he can't. All I'm saying is that a lot of people might associate him with a losing ticket. And unfortunately, that could actually matter a lot. So, I'm not saying he can't win, but it's why I'm saying I'd like to see him in the primary process.
It's like my life is in front of me as I look around here and see everybody, so it's wonderful. But look, folks, I just want to acknowledge the moment. It's hard. It's hard to lose.
What are your thoughts on Bernie Sanders' statement? I think he's 110% correct.
It's hard to understand while so many of our fellow citizens, people that we have fought so long and hard for, wound up choosing the other path.
Honestly, a Walz AOC ticket, I could see fucking banging. I could see that. Or an AOC Walz, but frankly, most people would expect, the younger candidate to be VP pick.
It's hard to reckon with what that path looks like over the next 4 years. So if you're feeling deflated, discouraged today, I get it. Take some time, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, take care of your community. There's a million ways to make a positive difference, and get back in this fight when you're ready.
Also, I can't help it, but when you guys are posting Walz AOC, there's a part of my brain that wants to read it. Walzaok. Walzaok, the conqueror! Okay, sorry.
And know that whenever you're ready to get back in that fight, I'll be standing right here ready to fight the fight with you.
John Lithium, thank you for the $5 super chat.
And while we haven't had a whole lot of time to process this, I can tell you, even in the face of defeat and deep disappointment, I've never felt more
We needed a successor to Restoro, and now we found it. Walzaok! Walzaok!
inspired. I've never felt more motivated. I've never felt more fired up of what's possible
I'm stealing that
in this
for a
country.
D&D character name. Go for it.
You know, I've gotten to see an awful lot of America over the last 3 months, more than I ever thought I was going to see. I've made many new friends. I've learned a lot of new things. I ate way too much local food, but I can order donuts, people. I can order donuts.
Hey, Tim, let's go! Tim, let's go! Still throwing punches from down on the mat. Let's go! Because honestly, we should never ever let go of one of the fundamental realities that Tim Walz should have been able to continue on hammering home about day in and day out, and that is that our adversaries are weird as hell. They are rude, they're gross, and frankly, they are also just deeply strange people in a way that's not really socially acceptable. And I think that that is fine to point out. They're all losers.
But I have to be honest with you, what struck me everywhere I went, without exception, people really wanted the same basic things out of an American life. And I want to be clear, when I say basic things, I mean things like meaningful work, safe neighborhoods, good schools, affordable quality health care. But I also mean something more. It became clear to me, people want security. And I mean that broadly. They want to feel like their life is built on a solid foundation that won't collapse under them if the wind blows the wrong way or something happens.
This is, I think, the correct takeaway from this election cycle. And the fact that Tim Walz gets it, while so many others in like the liberal pundit class just are completely and utterly baffled by what happened. Like Tim Walz immediately gets it. He actually talked to people. He actually understood people and what they were talking about. We saw that. We saw the segment before the election where he actually sat down with undecided voters and talked about the prices of corn with them. And like talked about like how much bushels cost and like how is that working out for you? He knows how to talk corn. He knows how to talk to working people, and he actually genuinely cares. And so it's not surprising to me that he understands it when a bunch of out-of-touch people who mostly go to, like, fancy cocktail parties don't. It's not shocking to me that he gets it. And I think that, and we'll get to this maybe in a bit, but, like, he gets it in a way a lot of people don't. And without giving too much away, I sat down for an interview the other day with an outlet. It's going to come out soon. But one of the points I tried to get at in that interview is that, the only real way to cut through all of the misinformation, all of the hyperbolic messaging, etc., all of like the alternative facts that Trump world and like conservative folks live in, the only way you can cut through that is with economic policy that is intuitive to people and that addresses their basic needs. Okay? Like this is true. Like the thing is, I could debunk every single video that Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh pump out from now until the end of eternity. I know a lot of you guys like seeing me do that. It's what you guys tend to click on YouTube. I see the numbers, okay? But the reality is that that might not really move the needle that much when it comes to where the rubber hits the road, when it comes to like where the median voter is. Like that doesn't necessarily move things. What people need is policy that actually addresses their needs. Pay less or make more, at least one of these has to be in your main pitch. Yeah, and it can't be like a means-tested bullshit kind of thing, frankly. Because what we saw with Kamala Harris was like, oh, well, if you have a new kid, we'll give you like a child tax credit. But like, also, she didn't fundamentally differentiate herself from Joe Biden. Joe Biden, like, helped kill the $15 minimum wage. You know, he failed to get that through. Joe Biden, like, failed to get the child tax credit renewed. Like, not like if you're not like the lack of differentiation here, like the child tax credit was huge. Was huge. Helped so many people, lifted so many kids out of poverty. But like you need to run on things like we're going to federally mandate free school breakfast and school lunch. You know, we're going to federally mandate certain programs to make sure that you and your family have food and water, shelter, have a federally protected minimum wage that actually improves your conditions. And we'll get to this later, but one of the things I've been looking at, and I want to do a segment on it later today, is Claudia Sheinbaum or Claudia Sheinbaum, I think it's pronounced, in Mexico. Under AMLO, for like the last 6 years, Mexico has been consistently raising its minimum wage by like 20%. And they've been able to do this without like massively increasing inflation or overturning like the economy. Like it's been a massive success. And that's something that the majority of people in Mexico have benefited from to such a degree that Claudia Sheinbaum just won her election with 60% of the electorate. And so like when we're talking about political power, that's what will cut through the bullshit. Okay? That's what cuts through the bullshit. Providing for those economic necessities. Making sure that people see lower prices in the grocery store. Making sure that people make more money. You need to be able to, like, paint that picture for them. Why they're in the current... You need to be able to condemn why they're in the current predicament they're in and paint them a picture of how they're going to get from where they are now to a better future. And that is fundamentally something that Democrats lately find anathema, largely because they think that working class people just will like they think working class people like own stocks. They think working class people are being affected by the whims of the market, and most people in America aren't affected by the stock market all that much. At least not directly, in a way that they feel and know about. Like, and that's what's really inspiring to me about Tim Walz here, is that he's coming out of this, and he's one of the only people who actually gets it. And right now, the Democratic Party is controlled by a bunch of neoliberal elites who are essentially, flabbergasted that they lost this election, but they are completely and utterly unwilling and unequipped to be able to point at the actual reason they lost, which is failing the working class voters, both in the Biden presidency and in like messaging around this election. Because the messaging around this election was, well, Biden's doing great. And guys, Biden's economy is doing great. We have lower unemployment than ever before. Guys, most people don't care about the unemployment numbers. What they care about is, well, my wages have been stagnant for the last 50 years. And suddenly everything is like 25% more expensive at the grocery store. And my rent has gone up. This is not like they see that and they feel that. Even if Biden gets them a 5% raise, prices are still 20% higher. So they're still feeling that pinch. And so, like, what we need is policy that to act as a surgical scalpel to get through this. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what Tim Walz is saying here is true. People need to understand that, like, if you vote for this candidate, they will get your kid health care. If you vote for this candidate, they will, raise your wages. Also, no one seems to want to hear that, like, it's not actually inflation, it's price gouging and greed. Exactly. And, like, the Harris campaign was, like, guided on its economic policy by her brother-in-law, who's named Tony West. He is a major Wall Street investor and the current CFO of Uber. Like, this is the guy who is crafting her economic messaging. So, like, yeah, it's not really that surprising that, like, working class people saw that and weren't particularly moved by the policies being put forward by the CFO of Uber. Even when filtered through, like, Kamala Harris. So what I'm trying to get at here is that you're going to see so many think pieces about how, like, trans people are the real cause of all of this. Embracing trans people put off too many Republican voters. No, the $200 million spent on, like, trans issues is to obfuscate the extraordinarily weak economic proposition that Donald Trump was bringing to the forefront. It was a flim-flam show. It was distraction. Because what Donald Trump is bringing to the table is essentially saying, I'm going to lower all of your taxes or even eliminate all of your taxes, and that will help you. And that is something that people get because people hate paying taxes. Especially if you're working class, you're like, wow, I would really like to not pay taxes. That'd be great. And Donald Trump goes in and says, you won't have to pay taxes. And they're like, sweet. And they're like, also, I'm going to pass a tariff to make China pay for all of your lack of taxes. And they're like, sweet, that will help me. And also, you're punishing our adversary, which makes you look strong. But, like, at the end of the day, a lot of those people never had clear and consistent messaging from the Harris campaign about what a tariff was. People, there are stories popping up constantly now of companies, rearranging their holiday plans and rearranging their purchasing and business plans for the coming years because they want to buy in bulk before massive 20% tariffs hit. Like, a lot of people, and this isn't, by the way, this isn't an indictment on working class people. Most working class people are busy with other shit. They're busy with the day-to-day task of staying alive and keeping their families healthy. They don't necessarily know what a tariff is, and the messaging that they got was, it's your enemy is going to pay for it, and you won't have to pay taxes. You need a message that both counters that and is aggressively, like, intuitive. I'm going to raise your wages. I'm going to make sure your Mima and your kid get free health care. Sorry, Jack, I learned about tariffs from high school history class and how they worked. Sure, you did. Most people have never had to think about that since high school. Most people in America, I'm glad that you learned about that. I'm glad you retained that information. Understand, most people aren't you. If you are here, you are not most people. If you are watching my channel, you are not most people. You have a elevated level of political awareness and curiosity that people who are dedicated to just getting by and providing for their kids and have like very little opportunity to do other things, like they're under a lot of stress. They're gonna have a beer and watch the game. They're not gonna go read up on what fucking tariffs do. Okay, you guys are in a weird bubble where you're politically brain poisoned and will do stuff like that. The normal thing to do would not be to look up what a tariff is. The normal thing to do would be to just like, be like, who cares? It sounds pretty good. And then drink a beer and watch the game. That, like, unironically, that would be the normal thing to do. Yeah, you've been brain poisoned by politics and shimp, exactly. My Christian homeschool education in Tennessee did not teach me about tariffs. Yeah. You see? Also different education systems based on state or circumstance. Can't get half the country to vote one day every 4 years. Good luck getting everyone to do research on boring policy wonk stuff. Yeah, exactly. See you, Amber Brains. All right, let's watch the rest of this.
People want an opportunity where they feel like they can get ahead, not just settling to get by. And they really are concerned about giving their kids a chance to get ahead. And I think most of all, and you saw it in a very deep way, people want freedom to live their lives the way they want to live them. It's not the way maybe their neighbors wouldn't want to live them the same way, but the freedom is supposed to be everybody's birthright, not because of how much money you had or where your family came from, no matter who you love or how you prayed or what you think about the issues of the day are. And everywhere I've gone, I've had the opportunity to tell people how things work here in Minnesota. And you know us, I had to work really hard to make sure that it didn't sound like we were bragging, you know, slip it in, slip it in. But the truth is, the way we do things here sounded pretty damn good to Americans across this country.
Yep. When you sit down and you explain, like, how things can be better than they are, people are like, oh yeah, I want that. Yeah. Can he run in 2028? I certainly hope he enters the primary in 2028. I think he's got more national name recognition now, which is good. The only thing that really remains to be seen is whether or not people associate him too much with a losing ticket.
We've made Minnesota one of the best places for kids to live.
It's true. Kids get free meals during the school year.
And we did it with a broad agenda. We did it by cutting taxes, but for working people and small businesses. We committed to making clean energy and lowering the cost of prescription drugs a priority. And we made sure that when you walked into a school like this, every child got free breakfast and lunch.
Where's that picture? Tim Walz children. Just real quick. Oh, that isn't the right picture. Oh yeah, here it is. Guys, this is a picture of Tim Walz when he signed that into law. Isn't that cute? Those kids are so excited. And you want to know why those kids are excited? Because as young as they are, they understand how big a deal it is for them to be able to eat something before school. They understand how big of a deal it is and how much of a load off their parents' minds it is, that they don't have to pack a lunch. They don't have to, do breakfast. They don't have to figure out how to budget for those things. These kids get to eat. You know? And frankly, that's the kind of issue that cuts through regardless of what you think. Regardless if you think RFK is the reincarnation of JFK Jr., regardless of if you think, X, Y, or Z, flat Earth, whatever. Like, that is what cuts through all of the bullshit. And, like, your kid being able to eat or not. That cuts through an awful lot of the bullshit.
We made college free for lower-income students and pay.
Stuff like that. Knowing your kid has prospects, has options to go and, like, better themselves and get an education. Like knowing that your kid might get out of, like, the poverty hole that you've been in and escape via education and career. Like, that's important to people.
Paid family and medical leave for everyone across the state.
We did it here in Minnesota. It makes a huge difference to folks.
We expanded the right to organize your workplace. We made our streets safer. We invested in affordable housing, and we made public education a priority. And we also did it by standing up for our shared values and rejecting hatred and bigotry. We, across this state, have fought for everyone's right to participate fully in our democracy and in our society. We have refused to scapegoat immigrants in this state. And we were the first to establish an ironclad right to reproductive freedom.
Yeah, again, a lot of these things are codified into law, which is what we're looking for when we're talking about trying to help people relocate in the U.S. to be better situated to survive what's coming down the pipeline in the Trump administration, okay? Like, this is the kind of protections we're talking about. Things that are, like, enshrined in law or enshrined in the state constitution. These things matter, and they will become crucially important in the years ahead.
When I tell that story across the country, you could see people saying, "Where is this magical place?" And then someone would have to say, "But it gets cold." Yeah. But you know what? The way we did it was actually simple. Not easy. Those are two different things. Not easy, but simple and straightforward. We worked for it. We fought for it. We organized for it. And we had a set of leaders that when we finally built the political capital we needed to get it done, we didn't bank it, we burned it improving lives.
Also, Tim Walz understands how to wield power for the people in a way that a lot of people in Washington, D.C. could never even begin to wrap their heads around. Because for a lot of political leadership in Washington, D.C., political capital is to be spent and burned specifically to protect your own career. Like, that's it. Yeah, Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker in California and Illinois are both also doing similar things. I just am a bit more cynical about, their specific reasonings for doing so. Like, everything that Tim Walz is talking about, he already accomplished, But, the more states that are safe, the better. He, as a lot of people on the left say about Gavin Newsom, he may be a serial killer, but he's our serial killer. At least his heart
and I
is in
can
the
tell
right
you
place.
what I've learned over the last 3 months is an awful lot of Americans are game for exactly that. Exactly that. Here's the thing, too. Nothing about Tuesday night changes any of that. Nothing. But here's what it did tell us. We're going to have to work a little harder. We're going to have to fight a little harder. We're going to have to organize a little harder. But I'm here to tell you today to tell you this. We can do it. No, that's the wrong one. We will do it, and we'll do it together. We will do it.
I like him a lot. Walz can try. I don't think he has a chance. Still too early. Well, yeah, of course. Like, all I'm saying is I'd like to see him in the primary and see how he does. That's it. That's all. That's my only position. I'm not saying that he can win the presidency. I'm just saying I'd love to see him in the primary.
So for now, I just want to say thank you, Minnesota, for giving me such an incredible story to tell to our fellow Americans in the other states. I do want to take a few minutes and talk about a few words about our path forward. I know there's a lot of folks that are worried about the next 4 years and what they're going to look like. I'm one of them. The agenda we heard from the other side in this campaign was very different from the one we know is right for our state and our country. We've already seen the damage a president can cause when he's in it for himself, not the American people. Look.
You know, what will be very interesting, Gamer G, it's going to be very, very interesting in 2028 to see the possibility of a general strike. Sean Fain has organized a number of different unions to all renegotiate their contracts in 2028. And it could be really interesting to see how that energy is tapped into by a candidate in, going into office in 2028. So we'll see. We'll see.
We know what's coming down the pike. We know it because they told us. And we're going to have to be ready to defend the progress that we've made here in Minnesota. The other side spent a lot of time campaigning and talking about and promising that they would leave things up to the states. Well, I'm willing to take them at their word for that.
Yeah, just to kind of back up what I just threw out there. Yep. The call is out for mass simultaneous strikes in 4 years. You know, we lost the election, guys, but life goes on, organizing continues, and this is going to be one of the major upcoming, centers of political strife and potential for political gain that we have in the foreseeable future. Why 4 years? Well, very specifically because a massive general strike takes time to plan. You know, you can't be like, the 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds on TikTok saying, okay, everyone, 2 weeks from now, general strike, okay? And everyone goes, okay. And then they're like, well, my version of a general strike is not going to Dunkin' Donuts on that one day. And that's it. Like, it's not how this works. You need time in order to set up when contract negotiations are going to take place, and then you need to coordinate between the different unions, So that's why it's 4 years from now and not 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It's because they're also continuing as in the lead up to this to try and get more and more unions on board. 4 years also give the companies to preemptively come to the table. True. Anyway.
But the moment they try and bring a hateful agenda...
Yeah, exactly, Gamer G. If you paired that with a pro-labor candidate, like a Tim Walz or an AOC type, I think that would propel them into the White House quite easily, at least under normal circumstances, if the system isn't horrifically shattered by then under the weight of Donald Trump's fascism. We'll see. But if we can make it to 2028, pro-labor candidate is the one to run. Yeah. Walzayak, assemble!
In this state, I'm going to stand ready to stand up and fight for the way we do things here.
Oh man, they can try busting out the Pinkertons. I don't think the Pinkertons are going to fare very well against the UAW, okay? That's bullshit, to be honest. 4 years is like saying we'll do it next election campaign, the Jill Stein special. Except the difference between the UAW and Jill Stein is that the UAW actually gets shit done. Jill Stein does not. That would be the major difference. The UAW delivers on its promises. Jill Stein does not.
Look,
Also, whether or not the UAW follows through, these contracts are all going to be negotiated by unions in 2028. So, like, whether or not the UAW does anything, all of those contracts are on the table that year. So, my point continues to stand. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, well, no contract for us. Haha. No, that's not how this works.
Minnesota always has and always will be there to provide shelter from the storm. As long as I'm governor of Minnesota, we will protect a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. As long as I am governor of Minnesota, we will welcome immigrants with gratitude for their contributions to our communities.
Let's go!
As long as I'm governor of Minnesota, we will stand with the rest of the world in fighting climate change and developing new clean energy solutions. As long as I'm governor of Minnesota, we'll be a state that respects democracy, a place where we're proud of our civic debate and where we don't demonize people who disagree with us.
Let's go. Midwest Blue.
As long as I'm governor of Minnesota, we will defend our kids' freedoms to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in their classrooms.
Pretty important freedom, as it turns out.
And by the way, as long as I'm governor, Minnesota will always be a labor state, a state that stands with working people no matter who they voted for.
Let's go.
But I will say and acknowledge this, about 1.5 million of our fellow Minnesotans voted for the other side in this election. And while there might not be a place in our state for the most extreme elements of that agenda, there should be a place in our politics for everyone to be heard. I think sometimes we can be quick to judge people who don't agree with us, to assume that they act out of cruelty or fear or self-interest. I don't think that kind of judgment is helpful right now. And I don't.
See, man, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. Okay? And I know, like, I'm a trans person. I fucking get it. It is very easy after an election loss like the one we just saw to look out into the world and see nothing but monsters that want you dead or suffering. Because that is, those are some of the loudest voices amplified on social media right now. Except on Blue Sky, which you should just be over there. It's a lot nicer there. But that's beside the point. Like, ultimately, we have a lot of people who feel very, very much like the only person that was going to improve their material conditions was Donald Trump. Because he said he was going to get rid of their taxes and make, someone that they believe is their enemy pay for it. And on the flip side, Kamala Harris had, no desire to differentiate herself from Biden. Milquetoast economic policies, some of which were decent, but like none of which were particularly universal in their effect. And you need that kind of universality in order to mobilize the working class. But that's the thing. The neoliberals around Kamala Harris, and likely Kamala Harris herself, they are incapable of pointing out that problem because they do not want to mobilize the working class, because that directly threatens their interests as neoliberals. Neoliberalism is about protecting, big business. It's about protecting the investor class. It is directly in opposition to the working class. It is the death, the slow death of liberalism. And at the end of the day, it is an ideology that is completely and utterly incapable of pointing out an accurate problem and appealing to these people. And if we want to win, we need people power. Like, Democrats can't win if they're the party of, folks making over $100,000 a year. They will only win if they become the party of people making under $60,000 a year. That is the path forward, and that is the only way that they win. And so if they can learn that lesson by 2028, we might have another shot at the presidency. Maybe, again, if Donald Trump doesn't kill the concept of democracy in the meantime. So all of this to say, like, Tim Walz gets it. And not all these people out there are monsters. They are people who, have a primary economic incentive, and then everything else just kind of weighs them in the direction of Donald Trump. Constant messaging about cultural issues weighs them in the direction of Donald Trump. And I'm saying this, by the way, not to say like, oh, you should embrace your Trump-loving uncle or something, and like, definitely go to Thanksgiving even though he misgenders you or whatever. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, like, in a broad sense, in like a political sense, in like a political strategy sense, the way to reach these people is through where the rubber meets the road and where they are actually making buying decisions and where they're actually getting their kids health care and where they're actually getting their kids education. Like, these are the things that rubber meeting the road, those economic points, that is the scalpel that cuts through all of the other bullshit. Well, screaming at the radio, that's not really a counterpoint. That's just saying you don't think that people will realize that by 2028. And, that's a possibility. But that's why the entire point of this stream so far has been, you cannot count on the Democratic Party to actually, save us. That's why I spent the first, like, hour of stream talking about the resources we put together as a community in order to survive this, talking about survival organizing. That's kind of the thing, right? So while the Democratic Party sorts itself out, we need to sort ourselves out and organize. We have those resources. They're under the resources tab on the Discord, riverboat.gg/Discord. You can submit different skills you have that you're willing to put at the disposal of the community. You can submit applications to be drivers to get people out of dangerous states. And you can also submit local information that you are privy to about safe locations that travelers can stop at and rest or get food or, find shelter, all that good stuff. That is a section. It's the Rainbow Book. We're putting that together. It's under the transportation tab, pinned. And also, we're putting together resources to help people acclimate to new places when they move there to get those safe state-level protections. And we're calling that the Lavender Pages Project. So if you are familiar with this location in a state that is safe, that has these state-level protections, put that in the suggestions underneath Lavender Pages. We'll get you set up with the template, and then folks can contribute to kind of building that out from there. So that's what we're doing to kind of collectively organize. There we go. I'm going to constantly be plugging that throughout these segments. That's what you need to know.
I don't think it's right. I think we ought to swallow, and this is me in this as I'm speaking about myself, swallow a little bit of pride and look a little harder to find common ground with our neighbors who didn't vote like we did in this election. Maybe we won't agree on every issue. Hell, maybe we won't agree on any issue. But maybe when the campaign signs come down, we all get a little break from the rhetoric and the TV ads and the fundraising texts, and I'm sorry about those. Maybe when we get a little break from this campaign that we're in, we'll be able to look at each other and see not enemies but neighbors. And maybe we'll be able to sit down over coffee or a Diet Mountain Dew and just talk. Talk about our kids. Talk about the lives we want to build for them. Talk about the things that really matter, how we treat each other, how we look out for each other, and how we support each other in difficult times. For my part, I'm going to try even harder to do that as governor. Nobody, not the DFLers, not Republicans, nobody has a monopoly on good intentions or good ideas. And now that this election is behind us, I'm going to try even harder to keep an open mind, open heart, and really listen to folks who don't support me or my policies, to work with everyone in the legislature to seek compromise and common ground. Because that's how we come back together after such a long time spent fighting each other. That's how we heal the rips in the fabric of our civic society, and that's how we...
Well, I mean, Modern Robot, Tim Walz is effectively saying the same thing, just in a kinder / folksier way. Bernie Sanders was very direct and also very correct. Tim Walz is just a more diplomatic approach to that same thing.
We move forward as one Minnesota. That's what this is all supposed to be about. Not who's right or wrong, not who's winning or losing, but are we moving things forward together, or are we falling apart? I still believe with all my heart, America can be a place where no child is left hungry, no community is left behind, and no one gets told they don't belong. That's right. And the reason I believe it so strongly is I've seen it with my own eyes because it's happened right here in Minnesota. And because of our example, millions of Americans...
Why not both? You should be both. You should... Yeah, honestly, I think Bernie's is the correct stance to take. I just think that Tim Walz, is a governor of a state, and he's trying to be diplomatic. I think they're just same message, just through two different filters.
Americans believe in it too. Let's keep working to grow security, opportunity, and freedom for all our neighbors. Let's keep fighting for the things we believe in with compassion, with dedication, and with joy. And let's keep making Minnesota an example for the rest of this great nation. I love this country.
Well, and Gilbertus, I totally understand the, fuck this kumbaya bullshit. I understand that inclination. The only issue is, if you are a politician, or if you are part of a political campaign, or you're trying to reach working class people, a lot of those working class people might, be othered by that type of language. It's kind of like, if we recognize that the primary motivator underneath all of this is economic anxiety, then, we need to do our best to speak to that and not be yes, all of the good Democrat workers and all of the evil Republican workers. Now, if we're going to run populist messaging, it has to be for everyone. And I know that that's frustrating, especially after a loss like the one we just tanked. But well, yeah, obviously it's not just economic anxiety. There's a whole lot of other things, but the prescription to fix this problem is running on that economic anxiety and speaking to that economic anxiety. That's what cuts through all of it. Obviously racism, the Southern strategy, obviously sexism, obviously all of these things play roles. But I think the primary thing that cuts through all of that is the economic anxiety. That is the way to cut through it. And frankly, and I'm just going to say this, like if catering to the economic anxiety doesn't cut through it, then we've already lost. Right? Like there is no other avenue to reach these people. In which case, by all means, get yourself out of these red states, get yourself to a blue state, and start looking into like getting out of the country, because your full-time project is now to flee the country because it's already lost. But again, I do think that these people can be reached. I think that a lot of people that would be off-put by like fuck Republican messaging are people who don't usually turn out and vote. You got to speak to the material conditions, and you got to like be able to speak to the material conditions while also not saying fuck tens of millions of other people that may or may not be, your neighbors, your friends, your family that you love. I don't know. Does any of this make sense? Because I feel like I understand the rage, but I also understand that maybe expressing that as a political movement doesn't necessarily help win you over those working class voters. Does that make sense? Okay, but can we not reach out to the Republican politicians? Because honestly, fuck those assholes. Well, yeah, I'm not talking about Republican politicians. Republican politicians are all evil. No, I'm talking about people on the ground, people who are working, people who are like in rural areas in like Appalachia and are completely and utterly fucked every economic way, but like, they might not turn out to vote, but maybe they would if someone they believed in offered them a way out of that. Exactly, GamerG. It is about mobilizing the greater number of people. Exactly. Okay, let's finish this.
I love this state. I love this job. And I'm not done fighting for Minnesota, not by a long shot. So thank you, Minnesota. Thank you, and let's get it done.
Nope. No DMCA for me. That poor guy. Hopefully he gets another shot, because he's the kind of political figure we need more of in politics. And honestly, he's not even like a socialist lefty type. He's just like he's just like an old school liberal. Like, he's someone maybe FDR could get along with. And like FDR was no socialist. Can I have some fuck you to my neighbor still? Yeah, of course. Of course. Like I'm not weighing in on you guys's like your different interpersonal beefs with Trump supporters. You can have those all you want. I'm just talking as a matter of like political strategy. I would say an FDR socked them. I mean, I don't even think FDR was a sock them. I think FDR was a liberal that severely compromised his ideology in order to placate the socialists and put them to sleep for 50 years. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. We've kind of been I've been kind of rambling throughout all of this. I hope you guys understood what I'm coming for here, or where I'm coming from here.
Makes sense to me. The left has an optics issue of being elitists, and the right has been exploiting that for years. We have to win over the AVG person, and to do that we can't isolate the AVG.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, like, Democrats this election cycle lost working class people. Like, that seems to be one of the biggest things to come out of this campaign cycle. And I mean, like, yeah, it's rough. It's rough. And like a lot of the liberal kind of elite pundit class are posting things like, I don't understand how leftists expect us not to notice that Joe Biden ran a very left populist administration on economics, and that people spent years constantly noting this fact. And it's like, yeah, he stopped messaging on economic issues like 3 years ago. Like, he gave up the economic fight so long ago. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. Or here's a graph from Pew Research. Americans' paychecks are bigger than 40 years ago, but their purchasing power has hardly budged. If you actually adjust for inflation, wages have not gone up for the vast majority of Americans. It's crazy. Okay? Like, wages haven't gone up, purchasing power hasn't gone up. If you thought your wages were going up as like an average worker in America, it was just flim flam. It was just it was a trick, a mirage. Is it true that the man with brainworms literally is going to be picking people for U.S. health agencies? I mean, we'll see what Trump ultimately decides on, but it seems likely, yeah. And, like, Jeet here is one of the few people that actually gets it, man. Biden's economic populism was concentrated in the first year of presidency, after which he shifted to foreign policy, his true passion. Many voters wondered why there was always money for Ukraine and Israel when USA continued to hurt. Harris shifted away from populism and, as New York reports, had economic policy and message shaped by Wall Street donors, headed by her Uber executive brother-in-law. Like, yeah. 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 And but by the way, it's not even a matter of like how much money was sent, but it's the idea that money is being sent to other countries when working class people are feeling that pinch. It's like salt in the wound. It doesn't matter that like the US was accomplishing various foreign policy objectives. You know, it doesn't matter to a lot of working class people. They just see the headline or they hear about it discussed at work and they're like, huh, yeah, that it does suck that we're sending billions on bombs for other countries, but we can't, you know, but eggs are like $6. You know, like that's something that sticks out. So, another thing, like, God, these stains, like Will Stancil, Bernie is so pathetic right now. He spent the entire last 4 years as a mega Biden defender, and rightfully so. Biden's presidency was incredibly supportive of workers. His worldview has failed, and instead of reevaluating, he's simply retreating to old habits. And it's like, most average Americans under Biden do not feel like the economy is doing well. You can quote unemployment numbers to them. They don't feel like they're doing so hot. And they don't feel like they're doing so hot because rent went up, groceries went up, and their pay has been the same. And even if their pay did get raised like 5%, everything else is way more expensive. So it really doesn't seem like that accounts for their current positions. You know? Like, you can't have it have it both ways. You can't pretend that Biden was this populist. He got like 2 packages passed in 2021 and then did fuck all with the economy for the next 3 years. You know, he promised student debt relief, and you know what? That got, it's dead. It's fucking dead. You know? When people feel like the economy is good, what people actually mean by that is do they have the ability to go to the grocery store and just buy their daily needs without needing to, like, you know, do the accounting math on every item purchased to make sure that they're within their, you know, they're within their budget. They feel a certain degree of freedom to be able to get the food that they need to survive without needing to do a full-on accounting class. That's what a lot of people mean when they say they feel like the economy is going well. And, like, Chris Murphy is one of the few people in Congress who's currently actually saying what's happening. This is from a few days ago. We don't listen enough. We tell people what's good for them. And when progressives like Bernie aggressively go after these elitists that hold people down, they are shunned as dangerous populists. Why? Because true economic populism is bad for our high-income base, which is also the fundamental premise of, like, it strikes at the fundamental premise of neoliberalism, which is essentially an economic policy that caters to that high-income base. So, like, at least props to Chris Murphy for being one of the few people in liberal America to actually understand what's happening. And I mean, like, I don't know, I keep coming back to this article from 2021. Biden privately tells governors minimum wage hike likely isn't happening. And it's just like, they gave up. They gave up on it. Well, Bema Saberwin, I'm aware that the right does essentially a society-sized Gish Gallop. I'm aware of that. But what my theory is that the one thing that cuts through all of that bullshit is not endless debunking videos. It is, frankly, policy that directly affects people, that directly helps people. You know, that is intuitive to people, and you can explain in, like, one sentence how it's going to help. When Trump supporters hear, I will cut your taxes, they know what that means. They understand the immediate economic impact that it would have on them. That's great to them, right? There needs to be a comparable message on the left, like, we're going to raise your wages. We're going to make sure your kid gets health care. We're going to make sure your parents can stay in their homes until they die. You know, stuff like that, pretty fundamental, but the messaging needs to be squarely on that. That is the scalpel that cuts through all else. It's the one thing that counters all of the bullshit. And importantly, it needs to be from someone that people actually believe will get that done. Yeah, basically, we need someone with the balls and political capital to run on Medicare for all. We need someone with the balls and political capital to run on, like, you know, ending hunger in the United States, ending homelessness in the United States. We need people who are willing to run on these social welfare programs. That's That's how you cut through the system. Like when you start means testing all of the bullshit, people are like, well, it's just not going to apply to me. You know, the means testing, which is designed to put people off, surprise, surprise, puts people off. And then they don't get it. They don't think it's for them. You know? So, anyway, we're back. We're going to be covering politics more as we go forward. We're going to be talking about organizing stuff. If you'd like to join us for organizing, go to riverboat.gg/Discord, and then you can find everything that we're working on underneath the resources tab and underneath the Lavender Pages tab. We are so back, folks.